there are laws and regulations that require the investigation and reporting of certain types of accidents. Insurance requirements also lead to many accident investigations, as do potential claims at common law. However, from an occupational health and safety point of view, the main aim of accident investigations is not to fulfill these legal and insurance obligations, but rather to prevent recurrences of the same or similar accidents. Accident investigations, therefore, should be regarded as an important part of accident prevention. Any serious accident, whether causing injury or not, every dangerous occurrence, and many near-miss incidents should be investigated. An accident can be broadly defined as an unplanned and unwelcome event which interrupts normal activity. There are three basic types of accidents. First, minor accidents, such as small cuts or the dropping of objects. Second, more serious accidents that cause injury and/or damage, such as someone falling from a ladder or a forklift dropping a load. And third, accidents that occur over an extended time frame, such as an illness resulting from an exposure to a hazardous substance. These types of accidents are best addressed by ongoing accident prevention programs that include risk assessments and the implementation of appropriate safe work procedures. It is the second group, the more serious accidents, that is clearly the main group that should be investigated. However, it should be remembered that very often there is only a fine line between a minor accident and a major one. All accidents have one thing in common. They all have reasons why they occur. These reasons are commonly referred to as contributory factors. Contributory factors that lead to all accidents fall into one or more of the following broad categories: environmental, design, systems and procedures, and human behavior. Environmental factors include such things as light, rain, wind, fog, fumes, heat, cold, and noise. Design factors include...
The third window shows that he falls and actually gets hurt, which would be classified as an accident, which could have been preventable. When comparing accidents and incidences, I like to use the tip of the iceberg analogy. Accidents are the tip of the iceberg. You don't see a whole lot of them, but those are the ones that you see regularly, that we talk about, that we communicate within intercompany. The incidences are the bottom. This is what sank the Titanic. There's a lot more of them. They're not well known. We might not talk about them. Employees might have a small one occur and not report it. Thoroughly investigating incidences will mitigate the potential for accidents or injuries. Before we can conduct a thorough accident investigation, we must understand the three classifications for accident causes. Direct cause, unplanned release of energy or hazardous materials. Indirect cause, unsafe practices and/or unsafe behaviors. And root cause, policies and decisions, personal factors, or environmental factors. All three of these are important for our investigation process, and they're important to understand what each one of these means. The accident weed. As you can probably already tell, I'm a very visual learner. I like to use pictures and analogies and tell stories to get my message across. This picture shows the three accident causes. On the left, hazardous condition, which would be considered a direct cause. On the top right, hazardous practices or behaviors, which is an indirect cause. And then the bottom, root causes. So let's just go through some of these. Hazardous conditions: missing guards, poor housekeeping, defective tools, equipment failures, no SDS sheets. Hazardous practices and behaviors: these things like horseplay, not following proper procedures, did not report a hazard, ignored the safety rules. Now, down below the ground are the root causes. We've got inadequate work procedures, no follow-up or feedback from management, lack of training, lack of knowledge, lack of safety expectations, poor preventative maintenance programs, poor supervision, lack of leadership, and the rules not being enforced. I like this analogy because the fact is, for the indirect and direct causes, we can try to address those as symptoms, similarly as pulling the weed out of your yard when you see one. But if you don't get to the root causes or the root of that weed, the weed will always grow back. So it's very important when we're doing our incident investigations that we look for the root causes to go back upstream, solve them from there, and help remove the roots, not letting the weed grow. So why do we investigate? We investigate to prevent future incidents that lead to accidents from occurring, to identify and eliminate workplace hazards, to expose deficiencies in our process, our equipment, our policies, and our procedures, to reduce injury and worker compensation costs, and to improve employee morale and the safety culture within OX. Most workplace investigations are conducted on minor injuries, severe injuries, and fatalities. Few investigations occur for near misses and close calls or first aid injuries. And the largest portion of the pyramid, unsafe behaviors and hazardous conditions, have the largest injury-causing potential. This traditional thought process is backwards. Yes, we do need to investigate minor injuries, severe injuries, and fatalities to determine root cause. But if we can change the way that we think about this and investigate and do a thorough investigation on unsafe behaviors and conditions and near misses and close calls, we should be able to turn around the pyramid and mitigate the risk that lead to recordable injuries and employees losing lost time. So an accident occurs. Now what? The employee should immediately report the accident to a shift supervisor. That supervisor will first and foremost ensure that the injured worker receives proper medical attention. The supervisor will then notify proper management personnel that an accident has occurred, and the accident investigation process will begin immediately. The longer that we wait to begin the investigation process, the less likely it is going to be that we find accurate information and find out what really occurred. Accident investigation goals. To timely determine the what, how, and why of an event, which will help identify the root cause of the accident, which will in turn help us develop the corrective actions for the direct, indirect, and root cause. It will also aid in preventing future accidents by eliminating any identified hazards. And once all these are found, we will have to communicate the findings and results to the entire company so we can all learn from each other. Accident investigation steps. We're going to first survey the scene, collect the evidence, analyze the data, determine the causes, develop corrective actions, and follow up. When should an investigation begin? An investigation should begin immediately after the incident because the scene changes, equipment, materials, and clues are moved, witness memories fade or change, and evidence is lost. I recommend putting together an incident investigation prep kit. Things that should be included in the prep kit are checklists of what to do and what to look for, flashlights, recording device, cameras, caution tape, personal protective equipment including gloves or vests, something to write on, something to write with, the proper reporting forms for our internal process, graph paper, that way you can accurately write down measurements, distances, etc., and a tape measure. This kit can be as elaborate or basic as you deem necessary to conduct an investigation. Surveying the scene. Barricade or tape off the area of the accident and keep employees or contractors out of the area. Protect the evidence until investigation is completed. It is important to document the accident scene before any changes are made. Take photos, draw sketches, record measurements. Document injured worker location, witnesses, machinery, tools, energy sources, environmental conditions, or any other possible contributing factor. Please note housekeeping and general work environment. When collecting the evidence, please consider the 4 P's: position, people, parts, and paper.
Mr. Richmond, we cannot hear anything any longer. Yeah, Mr. Richmond, we cannot hear any longer, please. Oh, it's like the network is bad there. Okay, please, can we all mute our audio, please? Please. Because I'm trying to mute from here and I can't see the muting icon. So the only option I have here, if the noise continues, is to move you to the waiting room. Maybe by the time you stay in the waiting room, then you come back to the class. So please. So at this point, I appreciate Mr. Richmond for that wonderful video, because the training of today have some element of accident investigation, and that's what he wanted us to watch that. We'll have to also continue with it once they are back online. Going forward, please, I would like to appreciate our speakers who are here with us so far. The person of Ms. S. Williams, you are welcome to the platform, and also Engineer Hafiz and other members of the institutions, and also the regional president of OSHAssociation in Congo. DR region is also here. You're all welcome. Our members and non-members and all delegates and all professionals in this classroom this evening and this morning and this night. You are all welcome to the classroom. So, is Leon, are you on board for French recap before we proceed?
Yes, please, I'm on board.
Please, over to you.
Ok. Bonsoir à tout le monde. Bonsoir, chers participants. Nous sommes très heureux d'être avec vous ce soir. Nous sommes très heureux d'être avec vous ce soir. Et nous allons passer de façon brève à ce qui s'est passé hier. Hier, nous avons eu à étudier l'unité 103, qui est le système de management de la santé et de la sécurité au travail. Il a été présenté par l'orateur Evans du Ghana, l'orateur que j'affectionne particulièrement parce qu'il a fait sortir tous les points saillants. Au fait, 3 points sont à retenir. En tant qu'organisme, l'employeur a le devoir moral de prendre soin de la santé, de la sécurité de tous les travailleurs. C'est-à-dire quoi? En tant qu'employé, c'est votre droit de bénéficier des conditions optimales de travail. Votre santé est très importante. Votre sécurité est très importante sur le lieu de travail. Parce que vous quittez la maison, vous laissez vos familles saines et saufs et vous venez échanger votre temps, votre énergie au bénéfice de l'entreprise. Par conséquent, l'employeur a le devoir moral de vous faire jouir de bonnes conditions de travail. De plus, il a aussi le devoir, obligation légale ou juridique. Parce qu'un contrat vous lie entre votre employeur ou votre organisme. Et sur la base de ce contrat, il reconnaît, il est le représentant légal de votre sécurité. Maintenant, comment allez-vous savoir si vous bénéficiez de ces avantages? L'orateur a fait sortir le plan Pdca. Le plan Pdca est le plan le plus connu en matière de système de management de la sécurité, à savoir planifier, P pour planifier, D pour réaliser, C pour vérifier et A pour agir. C'est l'acronyme dérivé d'anglais. Maintenant, planifier, c'est-à-dire établir les objectifs du système et ses processus, fournir les ressources nécessaires pour obtenir le résultat et identifier et traiter les risques et opportunités. Réaliser, c'est-à-dire mettre en œuvre ce qui a été planifié. Maintenant, une fois mis en œuvre, vous devez vérifier, c'est-à-dire surveiller, mesurer le processus pour voir si les objectifs seront atteints dans de bonnes conditions. Et finalement, agir, c'est-à-dire entreprendre les actions pour améliorer la performance en tenant compte des besoins. C'est le cycle Pdca qui est implémenté dans tous les systèmes de management de santé et de sécurité sur le lieu de travail. C'est autour de ce cycle que l'orateur a articulé les points importants. Donc, ces points sont tirés du manuel 103, à savoir le système de management de la santé et de sécurité au travail. Aujourd'hui, nous allons aborder le point 105, qui est implémentation effective des normes de santé et de sécurité. C'est un peu complémentaire à ce qui a été dit hier. Par conséquent, chers participants, mettez-vous à l'aise. Le point final aussi sera traduit en français de tous les cours. Donc, mettez-vous à l'aise et nous allons embarquer ce soir avec M. Evans une fois de plus. Merci à vous et bienvenue à la salle. Thank you, Engineer Emmanuel. Here is a little recap made about the main point about the management system of health and safety that we studied yesterday under the leadership of Engineer Evans. Back to you.
Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup, merci beaucoup, merci beaucoup. So, moving forward on this, because of our timing and so many changes in the timing structure in different countries, we are actually not in a very good time to waste further. Mr. Richmond, are you back? Okay, before Mr. Richmond and Engineer Evans comes back, because I can see it's possibly that Ghana network tonight, but I can see some other Ghana delegates here. Okay, maybe their network will be back fully soon. Okay, let's have a brief speech from our own leader from Belgium in the person of S. Williams. You are welcome on board, Ms. S, please. S. Williams, you?
Yes, I was looking because I let one of Mr. Richmond devices back in, but I can't find him anymore. So it's in and out for Ghana again, unfortunately. I was really enjoying that speech, that video. I came in late, unfortunately, but here he is again. So I hope the video will continue, because this is something that I think is one of the biggest mistakes we make, is to remedy the symptoms that happens in daily life also. Like the classical schooled doctors, they usually remedy symptoms instead of the root cause, and that is a problem we should address in all sides of our lives. And also, because the speaker in the video went farther than that, he also went to predicting the future. So he was talking about taking predicting measures, leading measures. So it's like your life. If you don't want to become sick, you have to live healthy. That's the thing. That's a preventive measure. So it was very interesting, and I hope we have Mr. Richmond back to continue with that video.
Okay. I guess they will soon be back. So thank you so much for that recap and for that brief remark from you, as well as you know, the issues of safety is the issues of surface cause and root cause. And sometimes people are more serious and more interested in the surface cause. They are more so serious in the surface cause. But as safety professionals, we are meant to be focused more on the root cause. Because why you need to be focused on the root cause is to prevent reoccurrence, to ensure that what happens does not happen again. If, for example, you have put all this health and safety management system in place in your company, in your organization, as regards to health, safety, security, and environment, and things still go wrong, it should be subject to thorough investigation. And in some cases, you have to invite a third-party auditor, a third-party investigator, to come and investigate and carry out an audit to really find out the root cause of that incident. That will help you to address reoccurrence of such incidents. But in some areas and in some organizations and all that, they focus more on the surface cause. They focus more on who caused the accident. They focus more on putting blames on people, blames on the employees, blames on the, it's just like in a spiritual affair. If you see in the spiritual affair, you see a pastor, for example, praying for somebody possessed by a demon or possessed by a demonic spiritual issues. The pastor will not actually embark in fighting the individual or slapping the individual or trying to beat the individual. No. It's not the individual, it's the issue. There is something inside the individual that is causing what is playing. So the pastor will focus more in praying and say, I cast you out, you demon. He's not seeing the demon, but he's casting something out. You see? So that is how this health and safety matter is. You have a lamp holder or maybe a shorthand or maybe a circuit that just got burnt in your house, maybe your electricity. You shouldn't be fighting the person who on the light before the electricity burnt or maybe before the fire outbreak. You shouldn't. You should cool down to find out who carried out the installation of the electricity. The wiring systems, is everything all right? Was the right equipment purchased for the projects? Who installed it? Does he have the competency and the knowledge to install? So you don't have much business to start fighting or fire or maybe to sack the employee who switched on the light. Of course, he will have to switch on the light. How he switched on the light shouldn't be a problem. But the problem is there is something wrong with the circuit or with the control bus or with the product they have used to wire the electricity, or maybe something wrong with the voltage of in the currency. So something must be wrong. So that is what the incident and accident investigation is all about. That is what the surface cause and the root cause is all about. And we are also trained to be to know that we should not put blame on anybody. Once any issue of health and safety is concerned, we should not put a blame on the worker or on the staff to say this or say that. No. You have to cool down to be able to find out the root cause of the accident. Maybe the root cause of the accident is lack of training or maybe incompetency. Incompetency. The person don't have the knowledge. You can't give what you don't have. You can't give the knowledge you don't have. It's not a magic. It's just you. When you are employing, you have to carry out your checklist to ensure you have the right person to execute the task, to handle the job, to handle such projects. Not somebody who have to come and do try and error. Something will go wrong. So That is it. And the control measure to it is training. Is training. Is training. So you need to keep training. That is why safety professional, you should not be tired of talking. You should not be tired of talking. You should not be tired of training. You should not be tired of counseling. You should not be tired of mentoring. You should not be tired of, inspiring your workforce and your colleagues to do the needful and to do the right thing all the time. So that is what that very video is all about. Is it? So let's have some question and answer session while we are waiting for the trainer to be back. You have questions based on yesterday session, please. Question, you have any question, just raise your hand, I will see you. Or maybe you just have to click on the any of the icon for the raising of hand, then we'll be able to answer. Okay, I have Victor. Okay, Victor, can you unmute from the mic? Is on red, is already mute. Just click on that mic. Yeah, then fine. Thank you. Go ahead, Victor.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you, Victor. Go ahead.
Okay. My question is, if somebody is working in an organization and the person gets fired and is seen as a whistleblower, seeing that something is wrong in a company, and if the person gets fired from the company, what should the person do in that kind of scenario? Because there was probably a safety issue and the person tried to raise an alarm on it and the person was relieved of his job. So what should the person do? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So this is a very wonderful question you have asked at this point. You know, if you're listening yesterday when we are talking about health and safety management system, Engineer Evans was able to mention some stops, and I also throw some light on our behavioral attitude towards management and towards our co-workers. It's very, very important. If you are working in an organization and you are always trying to do things right, but the system is not accepting that. The system is not welcoming that. You are always raising alarm when things are not done right, maybe because of the urgency of the project. They are asked the project manager give permission or maybe give an authorization for people to do whatever they like to make sure that they deliver the project without following the safety procedures or the safety operating standards. In that case, you have to try your best. You don't have to handle that matter in a very, I think attitude is the best to handle it, attitude. Your attitude towards raising the alarm, your attitude towards presenting the matter to the management matters a lot. Matters a lot, because if you use the right attitude, okay, they may explain to you and tell you also, look, we don't have money to procure this equipment now, but meanwhile, workers have to go back to site to commence the job, and maybe in the process, there is an incident or there is an accident, things happen. They will know that you have really complained of this and you have really tried to tell them that this is not the right procedure to execute this project or to working of this staff doing their job all the time. This is not it. They will know. But if you don't use the right attitude, the project manager or your fellow site engineers, depending on who is in charge of the project, will not be happy with you. They will think you want to sabotage their job. They will think you want to sabotage them and in the other way around, put them in trouble before the management. So the best they will do is to get rid of you in that company so that they will be free to continue what they are doing without your interference. So you have to watch it. You have to watch it. You have to watch the behaviors of your bosses or your subordinates. You have to watch them. You have to watch them, because if they sack you, it's only in the United States or maybe in the UK where we have Health and Safety Executive Parliament, and where we have occupational safety and health administrations, where they have so much authority you can put your complaints. If it's areas like Ghana, I'm sorry, you can't do much. They have sacked you, is that they have sacked you. If it's in the case like in Nigeria, I'm sorry, they have sacked you, is that they have sacked you. There is nothing you can do. But if it's in the developed countries where the health and safety have so much authority and have so much policing, you can take your complaint to the authorities and they will summon the agency or the company or the organization, and they must take you back to you. In fact, they can't even sack you, because if they sack you, they have committed another offense. So no employer in the United States or in the UK will sack you for raising alarm on safety issues. The MD of the company and the management of the company will have to be very careful, because you will put them to pay the kind of fine that will shut down the company, that will bring down the company. So they can't try it. They can't even sack you, because if they sack you, is another offense. It's in the law. So, but the countries in Africa, so many of them have free hand, because there is no bill, there is no authority backing such actions. So I'm sorry, as a safety professional, I have to tell you to watch your behavior. There are characters you need to display when managing top management and when trying to convince the top management to buy into safety. There are behaviors and there are characters to handle that. If you don't handle it well, you lose your job. Engineer Evans is back, and I think we have to proceed. Mr. Victor, did I try to handle the situation? Okay, thank you so much. Okay, somebody also have a question. Kayode, okay, Kayode, go ahead. Very brief, our engineer is back, so they can proceed.
Good evening, can you hear me, please?
Yes, go ahead, Kayode.
My question is based on the issue of the accident and incidents.
Okay.
I got to a point where the book says the incident, there is probability that there may not be loss of life or properties. I want more clarification on that.
Fantastic.
And because I've been thinking how accident or incident will occur and there will not be a loss, even a scratch, which has just been giving him a little kind of headache. So I want more. Then the second question is in morning and Saturday, because I happen to be there to launch into one.
Kayode, we can't hear you again.
Case study of one of the Federal University of Technology in Nigeria.
I can't hear you.
Hello?
Yes, your second question is what, please? Your second question? So we lost Kayode. His network is bad, and I can see that he's out of the class. So probably his network. So we'll bring him back. But any other question? I would like to answer his question when he's back. Any question from the floor? Okay. Okay.
I think.
Yes, I'm back. I'm back now.
Are you back, Kayode?
Yes, I'm back. I'm back.
Okay, good. So, can you write your second question? Can you write why I answered the first question to buy time?
Yes, I was actually into that case study, but it was as if I wanted to put the authority into problem. So that's why I was afraid of my job also, and at the same time of my project. So that's why I said I think your answer, your response has really given answer to the question. Just to be very careful in order for you not to lose your job.
Okay, thank you so much.
So remaining the first one now.
Okay, good. Now, the first one, as we said earlier, accident without injury, without crash, or without others. Yes, it's very much possible. We have what we call near miss. You can write it. We have near miss or near hit. Near miss or near hit. Near hit. Good. Near miss is an incident that happens without injury or accident or fatalities. Example. Possibly there are some kind of ties that if there should be maybe a water or something on top of it, you may not be able to say it. Let's assume you slip on such ties without falling, without reaching the ground. It is called near miss. Or possibly you are walking, you nearly fell or you nearly fall, but you didn't fall, so you were able to save yourself. That is near miss. Or you are walking at heights, maybe in a mask or something, and you did not actually position your safety harness or the safety belt, and you nearly fall, and you were able to grab yourself back within the height or with a ladder. That is near miss. That is near miss or near hit. Fine. All those incidents is called incidents. They are all incidents. They are all incidents. Incidents involve near hits, also involve fatalities. So they are all incidents. And as far as health and safety is concerned, you must investigate every incident, whether you wound yourself, whether you did not wound yourself. Provided something went wrong, maybe you have a slip and fall, but you did not fall. You now saw that, water is here, please let somebody clean it, and they clean it. Maybe the water is dropping from the AC and is dropping down to the floor, and the visitors are passing, and somebody is having such occurrences, and they're always cleaning it instead of repairing the AC where the water is leaking from. Because the root of that incident is the water leaking from the AC coming out to the floor, where it's causing slip and fall. So it's possible that you can slip and hit your head on the floor and the person will die. It's possible that you can slip and you will not fall. You will be able to have your stamina to hold yourself. So when you have any incident in the workplace, as safety professional, tell all your work employees or all your workers, once they have any incident, they did not wound themselves, but they have an incident, they nearly wound or they nearly collapse or then something really nearly happened, they should report it. They must report it in your reporting notebook, so that you need to investigate why did this happen, because it's not supposed to happen. So you will now see that there is always the water dropping or tripping from the AC and is coming to the walkways, and that is what is causing the slip. So you will be able to investigate the cause of that incident, and by the time you do that, you can eliminate it. But if you don't investigate it to find the root cause of that accident, investigate it, somebody, maybe a visitor who is coming to visit your boss one day, will just be smiling and just be coming, talking, how are you people, how is work? And she will just slip without knowing that the water have also been tripped out again on the walkways. And she can slip, and if she's wearing 6 inches shoe or something, that means that is a serious fatality. So from that point, it's direct to hospital. But you guys who is in the work environment, you slip, you do not fall, but somebody may slip and collapse there, and that is serious fatality. So that is the difference between the question you have asked. So they are all classified as incidents: near hit, near miss. If you are reading the book, you will see some areas they mention near miss and near hit. And I advised last time, try to read all the keywords, because if you want to build authority in this field, you must know your onions. You must know your onions very well. You must know the terms in this field. That will help you to build more capacity. Thank you, and Engineer Evans, thank you back. Did I try? Engineer Evans will, yes, Engineer Evans will do justice. Yes, Engineer Evans will do justice. So at this point, I want to welcome Engineer Evans, and I pray that he will help us to wrap up very well, so that maybe possibly tomorrow I will discuss with the speaker tomorrow. We see how we can handle it to be a little bit earlier to answer questions for this night, so that many of us who want to go back to bed and who want to also sleep and who want to leave the office can proceed. So at this point, I want to welcome Engineer Evans on board for him to proceed. He took us yesterday, just like Mr. Richmond said, the devil you know is better than the Satan you don't know. I'm just hearing it today. But devil is devil, whether you know or you don't know. So we are so happy that we are having Engineer Evans back. He did well yesterday. And I think the committee of the training, they knew that, of course, he's a very good trainer. And they want him to also handle the health and safety management system and also handle implementation of health and safety management system. All he taught yesterday is leads to course 105, that is implementation. How do you implement these things and how does it work? That is what he's training us this evening. And I said with a big hand play, can we all welcome Engineer Evans on board? You are welcome. You are welcome. You are welcome. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Engineer Emmanuel. Please, can you make me a co-host so I can share the screen with you?
Oh, fine. Fine. Let me do that right away. Okay, fine. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so today we are going to see how we are going to implement the health and safety management system that we have developed yesterday. And if implementation is key, otherwise we are not going to get the benefit from the health and safety management system that we have developed. In fact, it's very expensive in the area of time, resources, when you are developing the system. So if you have a wonderful system developed and you don't implement, you don't get the results, you become fed up and you will start complaining, especially employers will start complaining that where is the result? We are not getting any results. And that is going to be a challenge for the HSC professional to continue to maintain the system. So effective implementation of the management system is key. All right, so today I want to do a quick recap of what I discussed yesterday, because I'm sure some people joined late yesterday and probably they are joining for the first time today. Yesterday I gave the background that as a result of the industrial revolution, we had a lot of incidents occurring at the workplace. So pressure groups, concerned individuals, government, politicians thought it wise to do something about it. And one of the things that they did was to introduce an agency called the ILO, International Labour Organization, to look into a way that they can minimize occupational injury and illness and accident at the workplaces, which eventually was instituted in 1946. They did something, in fact, after the introduction of or the formation of the ILO, research revealed that incidents at the workplaces reduced. But unfortunately, we still had alarming incidents occurring. So they also thought it right that probably let's also introduce regulations. And one of the predominant regulations that were introduced was on the what we call the Health Safety at Work Act 1974. it also did something to reduce occupational injury and illness, because let's be frank, employers will sometimes want to do things because they know that there is a regulatory body out there watching them. It's not that they want to do it because they have the moral sense, but because they know that if they don't do it, they will be raped by the regulators. So that also helped, but we still had issues of accident occurring at the workplace. So that led to a body that thought it wise, let us be more inquisitive and find a proper way, modality to minimize and possibly eliminate occupational injury and illness, and that led to the campaign of developing management system. So that was the era. In fact, research has shown that management system development campaign helped a lot in reducing occupational injury and illness. But let's be frank, we have still incidents occurring at the workplace even after the campaign of developing management system. So now the order of the day is safety culture. Safety culture is the order of the day. It's believed that when you are able to have your workforce, have your management having the right attitude towards issues of health and safety, you are sure of reducing occupational injury and illness to the barest minimum. And the reason why safety culture is very, very important and being held high this time round is because it has a direct link with behavior of workers. 90% of all occupational injury arise as a result of behavior related issues. So once you're able to have people having the right behavior towards safety, you are sure of reducing accident at work. So this is the background to what I developed yesterday, what I talked about yesterday. So we assume that we have developed the management system. I also talk about what we call the Pdca. In the management system, they require you to plan, do what you have planned, check what you are doing, and act, which basically talk about review what you said you are going to do, whether you are on track or not. So that is basically the acronym that we use in developing the management system. And we delve into details. But today, we want to look at how we can effectively implement the management system that we have developed yesterday. Before I start, I want to establish this baseline. Risks is something that, especially when it has a negative impact, it's something that individuals and organizations and employers and government, they really don't want to come in contact. Risk is the likelihood of an undesired event occurring and the severity in case that undesired event occurs. That is risk. And in HAC, one of the key functions of an HAC professional or department is to put modalities in place to control these risks, either to eliminate it or reduce it to as low as reasonable practicable. The word reasonable practicable means it has a legal implication, because if an employee suffer an injury, he can go ahead and take the company to court. So when such an employee take the company to court, the court will want to establish whether the employer or the organization put measures in place to either eliminate or reduce the risks that resulted in the injury to the worker. So that is left to the medical being, the law, the judges to decide. And of course, they have a guideline they will follow to establish or come to conclusion. So in HAC, one of the key functions is to control risks. And in controlling risks, there's a hierarchy, a pyramid that we have, that we follow. The best option when you come to controlling risks is eliminate the risks. That is the best option. If you cannot eliminate the risks, then you go to the next line below in the pyramid. That is substitute the risk. That is replace the hazard that can result in the rigs, replace it. If that will not also work, then adopt what we call the engineering control. Engineering control basically talks about isolate people from coming in contact with the hazard that can result in the risks. That is also very, very important. If for one or two reasons engineering control cannot be implemented, because engineering control most of the time has an element of cost and time and effort. So because of that, probably the employer may want to adopt other strategy. So if engineering control will not work, then you go to the next hierarchy below the engineering control, which is what we call the administrative or management control. And then administrative or management control, one key thing that we do here is what's called the safe system of work. It's one of the modules session we are going to talk about. So the management or administrative control is very important to minimize the risk to an appreciable level. If administrative management control will not work, then you go to what you call the APPA, adopt or provide personal protective equipment. I added the A, which is appropriate, because you can provide personal protective equipment, but it may not be appropriate to really protect the people from the hazard that can result in the accident. So this time we are talking about appropriate personal protective equipment. So that one is the last thing that will an employer or individual who want to control rates will have to adopt. Now, as you go down the pyramid, the lower you go, the less effective it is. The higher you go, the more effective it is. So it means from this explanation, elimination control, substitution control, engineering controls are the best controls for risks. But because of so many factors in terms of its feasibility, in terms of its cost, usually employers find it difficult to implement. That is why a lot of talk is made on the administrative and the APPA, which is a little bit lower than the hierarchy. But of course, it's better than not having any form of control available. So this is what I want us to establish for us to delve into how to carry the risk assessment. So the risk assessment we are going to talk about falls under the administrative or management control. So it means risk assessment is very important, it's vital in controlling risk. But when you look at the hierarchy, it's really not the best option. But for time and cost and effort constraints, usually employers and organizations want to go by that. So that is basically on the risk assessment, the position of risk assessment. Now, we will look at some principles of risk assessment, why we need to perform risk assessment. Then we will delve into safe system of work, specifically an example of permit to work. Then we will also talk briefly on monitoring, inspection, and auditing, which is also a very important tool that we can use to ensure effective implementation of the management system. Then we will end with the health surveillance for the first session, what the role it plays in the organization. Then very important, we are expecting and believing that putting all these controls in place, especially as we are adopting the safe system of work, example of risk assessment and permit to work, and they're taking a very important monitoring and inspection and auditing tools, we are sure of minimizing or controlling risks. But in case there's a failure and it results in accident, we cannot leave it like that. There is a general principle and guidelines that in HSE we practice, that we need to do something about the accident that have occurred. The incident, the engineering manual was giving the distinction between accident and incident. So we need to do something about it, because if you don't do something about this, it will result in a way in the more worst case in the future, and that is what any employer or organization doesn't want. Remember yesterday we talked about the 3 reasons why employers will want to practice health and safety. the moral reason, because they have that moral obligation, because they are operating a community, they provide goods and services, they use the resources in the community. So they are moral obligated to make sure they protect the individuals who use their strength and effort to turn the raw material to finished goods for them to get a profit. So there's a moral obligation for employers. They also have a legal obligation. The laws are there. If you don't follow the laws and the law grips you, you stand a chance of paying a fine, a penalty, and also probably having your business interrupted in the form of closing down your business. So that reason also, employers want to make sure they make health and safety a priority. And of course, the economic reason, I gave some alarming statistics of the cost at the port of Beirut accident and one case in Ghana here. So that is that. Now, I want to add something small to the expectation of employees when it comes to the employers implementing health and safety. Let me say this. Employers have reasons why they practice health and safety. Employees also have a reason why they practice health and safety. And one of the reasons is that employees, they have the quality of life. Quality of life in the area of providing food. Quality of life in the area of clothing, shelter, transport, education, and etc. Luxury, leisure. So for them to be able to assess the quality of life, they need to be alive. So even though they are at the workplace using their strength, their experience, their knowledge to transfer raw material to finished goods in exchange for reward, they also want to be alive so that they can enjoy this quality of life. So this is very important that employers also appreciate this, so that they will also make health and safety a priority, so that at the end of the day, the employees can be alive and enjoy this quality of life. So enough of the foundation. Let me delve straight into what risk assessment is, some principles of risk assessment, and why risk assessment will have to be prepared. Risk assessment is one of the most important activities in the health and safety system. The reason is what I gave, the employer's reason and employee's reason. Because once you have a risk assessment that has been developed, then you are sure of minimizing occupational injury and illness. And of course, that means more people will be alive to enjoy the quality of life. You, the employer, you will also fulfill your three reasons of economic, moral, and legal reasons. So that is very, very important. And those who are new in the HSC profession, I'm encouraging and advising that your ability to develop risk assessment is critical in determining how efficient you are going to be and climb the ladder in your profession, the HSC profession. Because risk assessment is a bedrock in your profession as an health and safety professional. So please take note of that. So besides preventing accident and dangerous occurrences when we perform risk assessment, it also enables senior management of the organization to identify the health and safety priorities and allocate available resources. Resources are limited. Economic principle. Resources are limited. HSC department or HSC issues are competing with procurement issues in the organization, are competing with production issues in the organization, are competing with human resource issues in the organization. The organization cannot allocate or provide adequate resources to meet all of these. So when you are able to come out with risk assessment, the top management will be able to know the significant risks that they will have to allocate resources to either eliminate or minimize. So that when they do that, then later they can go and tackle the less risky activities. So when we do risk assessment, it gives management the opportunity to allocate resources to more important issues regarding health and safety. Of course, once you also do risk assessment, it helps reduce ill health from work activities in the organization. Let's look at some principles regarding risk assessment. We are basically talking about in developing risk assessment, you must always balance the benefit and risks. I've had some interaction and come in contact with some experts and a professional in health and safety. And sometimes they wonder why management or the senior managers of an organization are not committed to implementing or making available resources to control the risks that they have identified. And one of the reasons is that because the management realized that those controls that you, the HSE personnel, has identified in your risk assessment is time consuming in implementing or implementing the controls. Again, it is very expensive to implement control. Probably you will be recommending engineering control that require a lot of money, and the employer is also thinking of the cost. So that will really be a disincentive for the employer to make available resources and commitment to those controls. Then also the effort, some of the controls, it needs a lot of effort in terms of physical presence, in terms of stopping business operation. So when you do that, I can assure you, you will not get the commitment and from top management to implement the control. So that's why this principle is very important, that as we are developing the risk assessment, after we identify the hazard, we have to put control to eliminate or minimize. But please, let's not forget to balance this with the time that it will take to implement the controls, the cost that it will take to implement the controls, and of course, the effort that it will take to implement control. It's very important we balance that, so that at the end of the day, you will get the support from management to play their role in the implementing the controls in the risk assessment. So as I said, another principle is that in risk assessment, we are more interested in the significant risks. Resources are limited. We cannot implement every controls that we identify in risk assessment. So we are interested in significant, because the significant ones are those that can result in an accident, and probably those accidents may be the reportable ones or maybe the recordable ones. And that is where we are focused on. So that principle is also very important that we need to consider when it comes to what the developing risk assessment and specifically the controls. Who is responsible in developing risk assessment? The employer is responsible in developing risk assessment. Of course, because they have a lot of responsibilities, they appoint managers and supervisors to lead the front in developing a proper risk assessment or tailor-made risk assessment for the work activity that the organization engages. It's very important that those who are online, who are employers, sometimes you think you have employer and HSE manager, so you are okay, you are not involved in issues of HSE. You can delegate responsibility to HSE officer. Of course, that's why you have employed him. But bear in mind, you can never delegate accountability. If there's a failure of the system and it results in an accident, the accountability comes back to you, the employer. So that means you cannot just go ahead and just delegate the responsibility of development risk assessment without you showing interest in making sure it's properly developed and resources are available for its effective implementation. So please, employers on the platform, take note of that. That despite your busy schedule, you need to be involved, because if there's a failure, accountability comes to you. In the OSHA standard, it says that when you have an employees of 5 or more, you are required by law to come out with a risk assessment and identify the significant ones and put controls in place to what? To mitigate them. So let's take note of that. Sometimes in development risk assessment, you may need some specialists to come on board. I know companies who will have to require the services of lawyers, require the services of engineers and other technocrats to assist them in determining the appropriate controls for the hazard that they have identified together. So please, sometimes it requires for you to do that. So please, just bear that in mind, that when the need arises and you need to bring on a specialist to assist you in developing a tailor-made risk assessment, you go ahead and do that. Now, in the risk assessment, there are some regulations that back it. Of course, those of us in Ghana, we have one regulation that's it's called the Factories, Offices and Shop Act at 328, 1970. This regulation has some section that puts some responsibility on employers to develop risk assessment for their activity. And in these regulations, one of the requirements is that the risk assessments need to be adequate and suitable and sufficient. As we go on to our presentation, we will give some explanation to this. Now, developing risk assessment need to be adequate. Risk assessment is not stagnant. Risk assessment is a dynamic document. Sometimes when there is an organizational change, it will call for you to review the risk assessment. Sometimes when there is an accident, a recordable one, it will call for you to review your risk assessment. When you do that, then you make your risk assessment adequate, tailor-measured to suit your activity. You don't do withdrawal risk assessment and leave it like that 10 years, 15 years, nothing has been done to review it. I can assure you, it will be adequate, and once it's not adequate, it will not be able to identify the real root cause to prevent accident from occurring. So please, let's take note of that. When you develop the risk assessment after identifying the hazard, you don't leave it like that. That is a 50% job. And equally important is what actions are you going to do to make sure that those hazards that you have identified are either eliminated or reduced to as low as reasonably practicable. That is very, very important. So these are some principles that we need to know about risk assessment. How do we carry out risk assessment? Risk assessment we carry out first by identifying the hazard. I have my own definition of define an hazard. And anytime I'm doing presentation or I'm doing training, I give this and to my students really grasp the concept or definition of an hazard. I define hazard as anything that has the potential to cause injury to a person and or illness to a person and or death to a person and or damage to property and or damage to the environment and or damage to the company's reputation. Anything that can result in this, either all of them or one of them, is an hazard. So the first step in developing risk assessment is you have to find out the activity that you are doing. If it has to do with welding activity, if it has to do with providing security services, if it has to do with providing banking services, if it has to do with providing transport services, any activity that you find yourself as an organization, you pick each activity. Every activity, it starts from the scope where you have your control. I remember my colleague Richmond did a presentation the last time and he asked a question, where is the limit for a company to assume a responsibility of an accident that occurred to an employee outside the four corners of the facility? If at the new ISO standard, the ISO 45001 2018 solve this problem. That is why before you develop the management system, they will tell you to identify your scope in your manual. So your scope, they are asking you identify the boundary, the activity of which you can have an authority to control the activity. Whenever you have that authority and resources to control and you have defined it in your scope, even if it occurs outside the four boundaries, you are still accountable to that accident and you need to do the investigation and come out with the corrective action. So hazard identification is key in carrying out risk assessment. Once you have identified the hazard, we need to find out who is likely to be harmed and how are they going to be harmed. Here we are talking about if it involves personnel. how are they going to be exposed to the hazard you have identified? If it involves equipment, what is the likelihood that the equipment can be exposed to the hazard? If it has to do with the resources, other resources, you need to identify all these. Very, very, very important. Then you also have to go ahead and find out or identify how these people can be what? Exposed to the hazard you have identified. Once you are done with that, you evaluate the risks, considering the measure that I talked about, the elimination, substitution, the engineering, the administrative control, and the appropriate PPE. These are the control that you measure, that you identify. In fact, let me make this statement here. When you evaluate the risks, you are doing that to identify the significant ones. As I said, resource is constrained everywhere. So only the significant ones are those that you are interested in. So once you are evaluate the risks and you get the significant ones, then you come out with appropriate controls that I've talked about here to either eliminate those significant risks or minimize them to as low as reasonably practicable. Very, very, very important. Now, sometimes after putting these controls, you realize that there will still be some risks that will be associated with activity. We call it the residual risks. For that one, in best practice, you still have to do something about it. But that is not of a significant interest for now. So that is also a key statement to bring to the attention of my hearers and viewers, that after putting all the control, there can still be residual risks that will still be associated with activity. Once you are done with that, you record your findings. Record of your findings, sometimes you have to do that because the regulations in your country, international best practices require you to do that. Sometimes your own internal procedures also require you to do that. Sometimes your client specifications also require you to do that. So please, don't forget. And of course, it's important to record the findings and formalize it, because for business continuity, if an agency manager happens to leave the organization, whoever takes over should have some point of reference to continue the good work. So that's the very reason why we need to record our findings after we have developed or proposed the control. Then finally, we also have to review, and I gave some reasons or certain situations that will call for review. Whenever there's a massive organizational change in terms of introduction of a new equipment, in terms of relocation of your facility to a new place, they all call for you to review your risk assessment. Whenever there's any accident occurring in your work facility, you also have to review your risk assessment. And of course, your own procedure will also spell out, maybe every 12 months or every 1 year, based on your own, you want to go to probably to see. One quick advice here is that this COVID-19 pandemic is one significant change in the operations of organizations that call for organizations and health and safety professionals to review their risk assessment. The business as usual way of doing work in the physical place has changed because of this COVID situation. So please, those of HS professionals who have not done that, please take opportunity of this training to review your risk assessment, considering the COVID-19 situation that we all grappling with now. So I think my general advice on risk assessment, I've already talked extensively on some of them, but some few of them I didn't do, is they need to do a workaround at the physical place where work activity is being done, so you can properly identify the activity and the hazard associated. In fact, most of the time, we HS professionals, we do risk assessment and we just go ahead and just put what do you call it? Sit in the office and you do it. I can bet you, when you do that, your risk assessment will not be tailor-measured to suit your activity. You need to move from your office and go physically to the workplace, observe work activities, interrogate and interview people, sometimes the neighbors, and other simultaneous activities that probably may go on in the course of your work activity. So you can get the full grasp of the work activity, and then you can come out with the appropriate hazard. If you don't do that, your risk assessment will just be white elephant, and you can still have accident occurring. Of course, yesterday we established that stakeholder engagement is a model that in this time and era, if you want to develop management system, you need to embrace stakeholder engagement in the area of involving supervisors, in the area of involving employees, in the area of involving contractors, in the area of involving other stakeholders. We can be the regulators, we can be the community, the NGO, the civil society organizations. These are all very important. That you need to involve them to get their views so that you can really get a proper risk assessment for your activity. Of course, if you don't do that, then you can have some interruptions from your activity because of that when accident occur. Ignore trivial hazard and focus on the significant ones. I have here a table that gives a sample of a typical risk assessment. What we see here, it has a whole section that talks about what you observe in the course of your development risk assessment, who is likely to be exposed to, and you have a scoring. As I said, risk assessment basically looks at the likelihood of that undesirable event occurring and the severity in case it occurs. So there's a matrix, a table that we use in scoring. Because unfortunately, if I was in a classroom, I was going to draw a matrix and use that to explain. But those of you who participate in the physical training for our classes, you can have that opportunity. Probably my other colleagues who handle other modules will also delve into that. But all I want you to know is that there's a guideline, which is called a matrix, that we use in scoring the likelihood and the severity of that hazard that you have identified. And once you do that, you establish in your procedure, probably if you have a score of between 30 to 40, when you do your scoring with the matrix, then those activities that have the high score of between 30 to 40, you can consider them as significant. That is where you focus your resources in controlling them. Those that are maybe probably between 29 and 20 range, they may be medium. You first focus on significant ones. When you still have adequate resources, then you can concentrate on the medium ones. Then those that are below 20, they are low. That one, in the principle of risk assessment, they are not significant. Of course, if you have adequate resources and you have allocated resources for the significant and the medium, you can still go ahead and allocate resources to handle the low one. But the principle of risk assessment is focusing on the significant risk. So that is just basically on this table. The legal requirements, such as the OSHA regulation 2006, such as the health and safety regulation 1992 on the display screen equipment, and the noise PPE regulations, manual handling, and other regulations require specific risk assessment also to be done. So if you develop a general risk assessment covering your activity and you are engaged in this specific activity or this specific hazard, this regulation requires you to come out with a tailor-measured risk assessment so you can properly delve into the controls so that you can properly prevent the occurrence. Why are these regulations so much interested in developing specific ones? Because they have a direct link to the health and the well-being of the workforce that you are using. So life of a human being can never be replaced. That's why they are focusing and specifying that you allocate time and resources involve specific risk assessment so that you can properly handle that. This is a typical example of a risk assessment where we identify the hazard in using a ladder in a workshop. Who can be at risk as we use this hazard at the workshop, and what kind of control we can put in place to either eliminate or minimize this control, this hazard that we have identified. So, for example, in using a ladder in the workshop, some of the hazard can be that the worker using the hazard can fall. The material, sometimes when you use that, you go or you have some materials that you hook on the ladder. They can also fall and hit somebody close by. Or the ladder, because of its position, probably the ground may not be stable, can also fall over, and or some the person who are using can trip over. So these are some hazards. You can see that all that we have identified here, they are things that have the potential to cause injury, illness, or death, or damage to property, and maybe in the case damage to the environment. So that is the basic concept of hazard. Who can be at risk? Employee who is using the ladder can be at risk when he falls from it. Members of the public. Somebody will say, how can members of the public be exposed or can be at risk of an hazard? For example, because the employee has suffered an injury, probably you have to use your emergency procedure, activate it by calling the ambulance. In the course of the ambulance, moving from the facility, the hospital facility, to your workplace to transport your worker, it can expose some people to accident, other motorists. Maybe you may also be transporting the worker to the facility. The same scenario can also occur. Visitors who have also physically come to your facility may also be exposed in the way of what? Moving, transporting your worker, or ambulance coming to your facility, or probably you have not properly demarcated your work area, and where the person is using the ladder will fall over, and at the time the ladder fell, a visitor may also be walking around and may also suffer. So these are some people can suffer exposed to the hazard or the risk. Now, after doing that, you need to come out to controls. And as I said, the guiding principle in determining control is the hierarchy of control, the risk control that I talked about. But because of feasibility, because of reality, because of time constraint, because of cost implication, because of time effort, sometimes the first three are mostly not implemented by the employer, but in the best method. So with our material here, the example here is the ladder will be provided with security lock and hooks to make it stable. Once you do that, the likelihood that the ladder will trip over when somebody is using it will not happen. And also, you also set up a ladder register. This one is having its link on the need to do a periodic internal inspection. You buy a ladder from a manufacturer, it's in good condition. As workers are using the ladder, it may wear and tear. Depreciation will set in. If you don't have a system in place to do an internal periodic check of these ladders and possibly have a way of identifying them and controlling them, a worker will accidentally go and pick a ladder, use it, and this scenario that we have identified, the worker falling over, the worker bumping, or the ladder tripping over can occur. So it's very, very important we do that. Once you do that, you need to put them in a register, and the register will guide you on the next date of inspection. You can use an Excel and do a format to give you an alert to remind you of the next inspection. So basically, that is that for you. Then, of course, they need to record and retain the document. Whenever you have a client or regulator auditing you, they may not be available or physically be there when you are doing those things. They want to verify whether you did it, and the records is what they are going to use. So it's very important you do that. When you also record, you can also have opportunity to see whether you are implementing the statement that you identify in your policy. This time around, we encourage the use of digitization in keeping records. The manual way of doing things doesn't help because of the user friendliness, because of business continuity, and because of accessibility. When you manually record evidences from your risk assessment implementation, it will really not yield results. So make it computerized based, make it digitize it, and of course they need to review it. On the issue of record, unfortunately, we are no longer working with the OSHA's 18,001 standard. But for me, I still believe that that standard has certain things that were very, very important and were helping organizations to properly manage their system. And one of the things that the OSHA standard was requiring with the issue of risk assessment was that you need to make sure that risk assessment is physically made available at the workplace. Sometimes, if you bind, you may have about 10-page risk assessment covering all the various activities. Most of the workers that you are working with, they are usually not the people that they like to read. They may be discouraged by seeing the binded risk assessment put on the workshop somewhere. So for me, I always advise that if you can extract the various sessions of the activity, if it's a blasting activity, you extract the session covering blasting activity and post it at where the blasting activity is. Of course, before you post it there, you have to do a training. There's a whole session on a material that focuses on training the people who will need to know the content of risk assessment and implement. That is very, very important. I will talk about that later on. You train them and put a copy of that at the work area. Once you do that, they always have easy reference if they forget some of the controls and the hazard that you have identified. So that is one of the standard requirements of the OSHA's 80,000. This, I think, it was very, very good and it helped organizations that were implementing that. Reviewing risk assessment, I've talked extensively on that. So let me talk on the safe system of work. I think I have to run quickly because probably I'm behind schedule. Safe system of work. In the hierarchy controls, it falls under a little above the last thing to control risk, that is PP. So safe system of work position is just above PP. So in the real facts of it, it is really not the best tool to control risk. But as I said, because of the issue of time, cost, and effort, if you really implement it very well, you can minimize risks to at an appreciable level. So the safe system of when we basically talk about procedures that you are going to use to serve as a guide in carrying out your work activities safely. So what are some of the procedures? So procedure will include your permit to work procedure. You spell out all the modalities you are going to follow when it comes to permit to work, effective implementation of permit to work, which can help to control the risk. You can also talk about procedures such as managing your hazardous materials. You can talk about procedures such as your lifting activity. That is tailor-measured to your activity. If an organization, you identify the key activity, operational activities that you involve in that are likely to result in an accident. then come out with a written down procedure in the document control requirements of the standard. It requires you as an organization or the manager or the HSE manager that once you have formalized this procedure, you need to give it to somebody to review it, and the top manager of the organization will have to approve it. It is very important you need to approve it, because in the spelling out of the modalities for the procedure, it may require some resources. It requires resources in the form of money. It may require resources in the form of time from management. So they need to approve. If tomorrow you are implementing the procedure and the manager, hey, why are you disturbing me? Why are you saying this? They say, boss, you approve the procedure. Look at your signature. Inside the procedure, it says this. So why are you telling me I should not do what you have approved me to do? So that is that. Sometimes the procedure may be voluminous. Some procedures, 10 pages, 20 pages. I can assure you, it's only you, the HSE officer or the manager, who may be privy to the content. So there are other tools that we can use that can help us to properly implement the requirement, the procedure. One of them is by using work instruction. Work instruction is basically a one-page document that extracts some step-by-step things that will have to be done when you perform the activity. Once you do that, it's very easy for people to understand and implement the requirement, the procedure. You may also have some templates. You may also have some register, and you may also have some lists. These are all tools that we can use to help us to properly implement these operational procedures that you have identified. You can also come out with what we call the method statement that looks at the step-by-step work activity, how the work activity will be done. So, in developing a safe system of work, I've already spelled out certain things there. We are saying that information about who to authorize it, and the detailed information about the hazard and the associated risks, the precaution to be taken, the instructions about the PPE, clear work instruction, and the procedure for emergencies. All these things will have to be spelled out in the various operational procedures you are going to develop, so that you can have the operational project properly implemented to help you to manage occupational health and safety, and specifically risks at the workplace. When you draft the document, as I said, give the supervisor or manager to approve it, and date, and make sure it is updated. You should also have a document control procedure that will spell out the frequency and the periodicity at which you need to review your document. Because as I said, sometimes whenever there's accident, sometimes your regulations require you to also review the procedures as and when it is applicable. Now we are expecting that we have developed our safe system of work. How are we going to implement them? As I said, one key way in implementing them is communicating the controls that you have identified the hazard to the people who need to know. If you don't do that, you never get a result. Each activity, of course, because the risk assessment has been developed covering all the activities, you don't need somebody who is a welder to participate in a risk assessment training that you are organizing for office activity. They are going to waste their time. You organize training for the on the content of the risk assessment for each work group. It takes a lot of time. I can assure you, it takes a lot of time. Just imagine organizing training for office staff. Sometimes because of their number, you have to divide them on the content of your risk assessment you are developing covering office activity. You have to do that for the welding activity, the welders, do that for the lifting team. It's a whole job. But I can assure you, if you're able to do this, you will get the people understand the content, and once they understand the content, they will make themselves available to make sure they implement it properly so they can get a result. You also need to make sure that a copy, written copy of the system and the safe system will be available for reference. This time around, because of the digitization, you can develop a centralized system in your system, in the organization. Your IT people can develop that, where you can put a copy of the approved procedures, operational procedures, safe system of work procedures, and put them there so that any departmental heads can have access to. Of course, somebody will say, what about the workers? You can have some platform like toolbox meetings, like internal training, where you can use to explain, draft a PowerPoint, extract, animate it, and use that to explain the content of their procedures for the safe system of where you have developed for the workers to also understand. All right. One typical example for the safe system of where the permit to work, which I've already talked extensively on. There are different types of permits that we have to issue based on the activity that you do. If you are doing a work in a confined area, because of the criticality, the sensitivity, you need to develop a template that will be used to control the work activity, where you spell out the hazard that are likely to occur whenever you are doing a confined work, and the controls. Very important. In the permit to work, you need to get the topmost person who is overseeing the job to be involved in approving by signing. When you do that, the person will know that, okay, I'll put my signature on. If there's a failure, if I don't play my role in supervising and ensuring that the controls spelled out are implemented, unfortunately, I can be accountable. So, once you do that, you will get their support. But before you do that, one of the things that states that all the people who are involved in approving the permit, you organize some training for them. Let them appreciate why you need a permit to work, why they need to approve and sign. When you do that and you send the template for them to sign, they will understand. They will not just sit in the office and sign. They will walk to the field, check and make sure all the controls are in place before they sign. They will increase their supervision and monitoring because they understand. This is how HAC is going now. When you do that, stakeholder engagement with supervisors, with worker representatives, you are going to get their involvement in that. So this one, I will not delve into. Based on your activity, you can have the special lifting, you can have hot work. All these activities, you need to have a formalized template that you use to control the activity. So it's asking what are some of the specifications in the permit. The permit should spell out what you should isolate, the precautions you need to take. It should spell out the appropriate PPEs and the other equipment resources that you need to control the hazard you have identified or the risk you have identified, and the sequence of the work that will have to be undertaken and the other controls. So all these things are there. So that is enough on the safe system of work with a specific example on the permit to work. Now, another very important tool that is also available for us when it comes to safe system of work, for us to get the result, is by coming out with a very robust monitoring, inspection, and audit program. The monitoring and inspection programs, of course, because on your resource constraint, you can make it quarterly. But I have adopted a strategy at my workplace where I do a form of monitoring and inspection every month on my system. I use a carefully structured checklist that gives me opportunity to review my documentation and have opportunity to review my operational issues. It's very, very difficult. It needs a lot of commitment to get the results. But I can assure you, if you are HSE manager and you are able to fully follow this to the latter, you always have your system working. And anytime you hear a regulator coming to inspect your facility, you hear a client or third-party certification body coming to audit your system, you never shake, because every month, you as an HSE manager, you have the opportunity to check your system to see whether it's working. That's a very important monitoring and inspection tool. Another thing is that management involvement is key. Try and engage your top management to assign or give top managers of the organization or the departmental heads some targets. Hello.
Yes, just rounding up. Sorry for slowing the flight. I know we are descending already, so we're already descending. So just wrapping up.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right. Okay, so let me just quickly move straight and talk briefly on the audit. Then I'll go straight to the accident investigation. On the audit, we have the reactive and the proactive. I would prefer you engage in more of the proactive. That involves a lot more on internal audit. It's a very, very important exercise that you need to do. There are so many guidelines, conditions that surround internal audit. Once you have a formalized procedure on the modality to follow internal audit, you should be fine. Of course, one thing is bias. You have to make sure that there's fairness. You don't audit your own system. Get somebody to audit you. We have some first and second party organization that can be involved. OSHA organization can do that for you. We can engage or do that first party or second party audit, as you may call it, for your organization. Lastly, on health surveillance, it's very critical. I just want to say something briefly here, because a lot of organizations are spending a lot of money doing annual medicals for their workforce, but they don't have a baseline on what they need to do. You can engage the services of occupational hygienists to give you a baseline on the work activity and the health hazards that they are exposed to. It is based on that you have to come out with your annual medicals. You don't just go ahead and do general annual medicals. Somebody in the office is doing noise or odometry. You are wasting money. Engage occupational hygienists to help you to give a baseline so that you can help to manage and properly apply resources to the latter. Okay, so I'll go straight to accident investigation, and that will bring me to a close. As already indicated, accident is something that we don't desire as an employer and as an employee. Employee has a quality of life he wants to enjoy. Employees have economic, legal, and moral reasons. To accident always bring costs and other issues to them. Now, in the accident, the regulations that you find yourself may require you to report them. In Ghana here, one regulation for occupational health and safety is Factories, Office and Shop Act, which is managed by a regulator called Office Inspectorate. In fact, they require you to report any incident or any accident starting from lost time injury upwards. So if you're an organization in Ghana and you will have an accident that goes from lost time and above and you don't report, you are violating. If you are found culpable, you can be fined and prosecuted. So that is very, very important. Another reason why we need to report is that we also need to monitor the trend. And once you monitor the trend, you can take decisions and allocate appropriate resources to close them. Now, what to report? The next slide. I've already highlighted. Major injuries will require to be reported. Then dangerous occurrences. This didn't result in what? A real accident. It's reported. The radar diseases also have to be reported. So that one is based on the country that you find yourself. But please, let's take note. Reporting of the accident is very, very important. When you report internally, it gives opportunity to do investigations. When you report, it also meets you to make sure that you also meet your client's requirement and your regulatory requirement. So let's make sure that we report accident, even when it didn't record in the rare case situation. This gives us a template of a typical accident report. I'm not going to go into details. I think my other models may go into details because of time constraint. I want to briefly talk on the why we need to investigate when accidents occur. When you investigate when accidents occur, it is to your benefit, because accidents are unplanned events that resulted in the undesirable consequence. So once you investigate, then you're able to what? Identify the root cause. The root cause is key, not the immediate cause. The root cause is key. Root cause is always linked to the management system of the organization. Root cause is looking at the manpower issue. Root cause is looking at the methodology, the method you use in working. Root cause is looking at the machinery that you are using. Root cause is looking at the monitoring technique, the tool that you are using. Root cause is looking at the material that you are using in doing your job. When you do root cause, this is the fishbone method. If you do a proper root cause for accident, you are 50% sure that you are going to prevent the same sequence of events from occurring. Once you do the root cause, then the next 50% is come out with corrective action. So the corrective action is always linked to the root cause. And that means the corrective action is always looking at your system. Of course, you can start with the correction. That is what you are going to do immediately. But don't leave it there. Go a step further and delve into the system. If somebody didn't follow the rule of safety in the workshop, for example, he didn't wear his safety glass and a foreign object entered into the eye, he lost his eye, you have reported the regulatory body, your own internal procedure is saying you should do it. If you do investigation and you establish a root cause, you will probably find out probably the manner in which you do your training, either through your induction or through your internal training or through your toolbox talk, is really not the best. Whenever you are doing training, you need to do an initial assessment of the effectiveness of the training material, the trainer. You need to do an instant assessment to see whether those people who are listening to the or who are participating in the training understand, and do a delayed feedback. You see 6 months, 1 year after the training, are they implementing? So this is something that we need to also consider. So root cause is very critical that we need to do for accident and come out with corrective action. When you do this, I can assure you that you always prevent the sequence of incident happening. If by chance they occur, it's a learning curve. Take opportunity to review your procedure, to review your risk assessment, to review your safe system of work, operational procedures. Probably they may not be adequate. It's opportunity to review them and telemeasure it, and you move on. Continuous improvement, continual improvement is always the term we use in managing HSE. Very important is involvement of people whenever you are recommending the corrective actions. So I'll quickly, I've talked something on training. I think that should be okay for me. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Please, can we just give him a big hand and a big shout for that wonderful presentation? In fact, I'm just praying, God, let this flight land safely. Let this flight land safely. And finally, we landed. So at this point, I don't want us to because some of the delegates in this class at this point is already checking the timing in their country. Is already midnight and they need to go back to sleep. So I will shorthand the system, and I believe my colleagues in agreement with them, and I believe is also going to be in a good agreement with you, so that everybody can go and estimate what we have learned so much. I know you have heard enough. Some people are not ready to sleep, but I'm sorry. Some people, some people are already lying on the bed, and some are still in the office. And you know, we just have to shut down. I know. With all you have learned, before all the pressure from Engineer Evans stimulate and leave you, we are back here tomorrow. So at this point, I said thank you all. And let me just give one of the delegates, if they can just do 1 minute thank you to our pilots who have driven this flight. Let me call Mr. Bolarinwa Babatunde also. Please, can you give us 30 seconds, less than 1 minute recap? Thank you to our pilots, and just a short comment on behalf of your colleagues, then we can go.
Yeah, thank you very much. On behalf of my colleagues, I say a big thank you to our lecturer for this evening, and we highly appreciate you, and God bless you.
Thank you so
sir.
much. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bolarinwa. So, to adjoin this, Mr. Richmond, and I've already said, based on the agreement from the back end, we have agreed the French cap and every other things will flow tomorrow, and questions will flow tomorrow. Now, you can't even ask questions because your head, as I can see it, is very heavy. So you can't even ask questions now. I know. So we need to allow it to cool for questions to come. So, Mr. Richmond, can you give us 30 seconds? If you have, if not, I'm okay to go. We cannot hear you, Mr. Richmond.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.